Hey everyone, can you hear me, William?
I can hear you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you well. Well, thanks everyone for coming to our community call. Today, Federico will not be present since he's traveling to Paris for a conference, a governance conference organized by Blockchain Gov. I think we discussed this in the previous call, but basically there's this huge conference with all the important people discussing blockchain governance. And Federico will be present on a panel about exit to community. And I think Alex will also be attending, and Jamila, who was previously at Kleros, she's now at Scroll and also helping with Blockchain Gov. We probably shared panels and conferences with most people that will be on this new conference, but it's always good to present what we have been working on and also learn what are the themes that people are discussing. So looking forward to listening to the recordings of this call. So today we have William doing a presentation about the progress that we had on V2 related to mechanism design and the challenges. And also looking forward to this, William. I think we probably have heard a bit of some of the topics that you will cover, but also I'm sure there are some things that are new since we are getting very close to having this new mechanism going live. So you can go ahead and start.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I'm just going to summarize a lot of different research that's gone into the road to Kleros V2. I think this is as much as I can make my slides full screen. So I'm sorry if the annoying border. But there are a lot of different fields that go into Kleros research, things related to computer science and cryptography, a lot of stuff related to economics and game theory and mechanism design. So it's a vast topic that has lots of big things and smaller details, and I'm going to try to hit some best of the most big important themes. So if you've heard me speak before, you may have heard bits of this. But nonetheless, I hope this will be interesting to people watching. So I would say that there are two big sort of questions when you're designing mechanisms for a system like Kleros that you have to grapple with, and they're really common to any system that would handle dispute resolution. Basically, how do you pick the people that you're on your jury? Who are your jurors? What are your eligibility conditions? What chances do people have, assuming they're eligible, to be a juror in any given case? And once you have a jury, what do they do? What does voting look like? How do you take their votes, whatever format they might be in, put them together into some kind of collective outcome? What kinds of incentives do they have? So I'm going to explore the sort of space of possibilities we had in mind when we were developing Kleros V2 and kind of things we ultimately landed on. So to recall, starting with the juror selection questions, and then I'll talk about the voting and what that looks like later. In Kleros V1, our juror selection kind of looks like the following. We have this tree of courts that people can stake into. They're generally kind of categorized by the skills you need to handle the kinds of disputes that go into the courts and the cases in that court. At the base of the tree or the root, you have the general court, which is supposed to be able to take jurors that have just general skills and no specific kind of qualifications. And then once you pick a court that corresponds to these kinds of cases you want to handle, your skill set, you stake the Kleros PNK token, indicating that you want to be in that court, and you might be drawn for cases in the court. And what are your chances of being drawn? Well, it depends on how many tokens you stake, and specifically your weight of being drawn in any given draw is constant, basically. So if you staked 20% of all the tokens in that are staked in that court, so that are eligible for being drawn in the cases in that court, your odds of being drawn in any given juror draw are 20%. If you you're drawn once, you might be drawn again for the same panel, and your odds for the next draw would still be 20%. And then you can look at the attack resistance of this. You sort of calculate like how many tokens an attacker would need to have in order to take over the court, get a majority of votes on panels with high probability. So in this specific example where people have this breakdown of the token weights, you can run the numbers and you can be like, okay, the attacker has a 45% chance of being drawn on any given draw. So, if I draw several times, the odds of him getting 2 out of 3 of the spots, you can sort of do the math using, kind of binomial probabilities, are 42.5%. So the security model of this court, of the system, is very straightforward, that an attacker will not be able to get over half of the votes on a given panel with high probability, particularly if the panel is large, unless they have 50% of the stake. So specifically, if they have more than 50% of the stake, as the panel gets larger and larger by the law of large numbers, their odds of taking over the panel and having the majority of the votes go to 1. But if they have less than 50% of the stake, as the panel gets larger and larger, their odds of getting more than half of the votes, again by the law of large numbers, will go to 0. And why do we have this system for Kleros v1? Well, in Kleros v1, it was developed in 2019, there were no good identity tools. So this whole thing about an attack, any individual, any juror being able to be drawn more than one time for a given case was kind of inevitable, because it was the only thing we could do that was Sybil resistant. If you imagine you remove someone and you don't allow their address to be drawn again if they've been drawn once, then an attacker is just going to have an incentive to split up their stakes into lots of little stakes, and they'll actually have an outsized weight compared to the honest people. Compared with Kleros v1, they'll have a system like that would favor the attacker more than the mechanism we have in v1, because the honest jurors may only have one address, and if you draw them, they're removed, so the attacker's weight increases. Note that this is related to I talk about 51% attacks. The name comes from the Bitcoin world and is related to similar attacks that are on the Bitcoin proof of work or Ethereum proof of stake consensus algorithms. Always there's always this question of how many resources does someone need to have in a crypto economic system to take over a system? Maybe something more generally, I might say whale attacks or something. So what can we do? V1 was launched in 2019. I just said that the identity tools weren't very good back then, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about what can we do with the new identity tools that have evolved in the space in the past years. In some cases, what identity tools do we need that the space is not developing, that we developed ourselves, to have better mechanisms that have more robust, more attack resistant, and also sort of more user friendly in various ways. And a big example of this, as probably most of you are aware, was the Proof of Humanity Sybil resistant list. So this is a proof of person tool that was developed by Kleros Cooperative. It's a curated list that basically is designed so that each individual should only be able to have one profile per human being. And if there are disputes over whether you're eligible to be on the list, someone accuses you of already having a profile, for example, or for some other reason you don't meet the criteria of the list, then the disputes over that eligibility are resolved by Kleros. This gives us more space to have better mechanisms for how our jurors are drawn. So now specifically, you can imagine like a mechanism that we've already developed as a dispute kit for Kleros v2 will allow any given address to be drawn once, and that address has to be on Proof of Humanity. So an attacker can't split up their token stake and get an outsized advantage unless they somehow broke Proof of Humanity. So imagine that everybody has their one address, the attacker is only on this list once, and you can analyze the resistance of this. The odds the attacker gets more than half of the votes, well, 0. Because they can be drawn once, They have some huge percentage of the stake. Here it was 45%. And that gives them a really good chance of being drawn one time, but they can only be drawn one time because otherwise, because that is guaranteed by the Sybil resistance perfusionality. And what's really interesting, I find, is that you might say, okay, that's great, but am I replacing the security model I had before, where I say that I need to have a majority of the token stake to take over the court, by some different, maybe better, maybe worse security model, where I'm assuming the proof of humanity is secure? What if proof of humanity is not secure? What happens then? What's interesting is, say the attacker gets a bunch of profiles, but nobody else has more than one profile. So as you draw the attacker, their weight stays the same because they've been able to split up their PNK with lots of different stakes. But if you draw somebody else, they're removed because they only had one address on proof of humanity. And when they're removed, everybody else's odds go up a little bit because that Alice here is no longer in the juror pool. So if you run this sort of math here with this specific example, find out that the attacker that started with 45% of the stake has a roughly 52% chance overall of getting 2 or more out of 3 votes. And what's curious about that is that they completely busted proof of humanity in this sort of worst case scenario that we have. But they still need a lot of the token stake in order to take over the system. You wind up with a security model with kind of and or. Either proof of humanity needs to be secure, in which case it doesn't matter how many tokens the attacker has, or even if proof of humanity isn't secure, as long as the attacker doesn't control too large a percentage of the stake, then you're still good. The exact percentage of the stake depends a little bit on the distribution of how much tokens other people stake. If everybody had a sort of evenly distributed, everybody stakes very small amounts, then the attacker would still need 50% to take over the court. If you have kind of more of a glumpy distribution where some people stake a lot, then as they're removed, the attacker's odds improve. So the attacker might need slightly less than 50%. But still, these mechanisms that we have complement each other. Their security models kind of layer on top of each other, so that we have extra layers of defense. Not only do we have the kind of natural property we might want to have, where in a given case, any one person can only be drawn one time, but also the court is more secure by having added this mechanism. And then other identity tools that we've thought about how to incorporate into V2, which are a little more preliminary. To some degree, these have been coded into certificates. Others are things that might be developed in the future. A lot of work has been done recently by other people in the Ethereum ecosystem around what is called sound tokens. So these are sort of non-transferable NFTs. The idea is that maybe I have a diploma from some online Solidity course that I took. Maybe I get kind of a non-transferable POAP from attending a conference. Maybe I took out a loan on an under-collateralized DeFi protocol, and I didn't pay it back. So I get some kind of deadbeat SPT. And you can use this sort of profile of people's social history to get kind of credit scores, or a bigger, more complete social look at people in a way that often Web 2 institutions run on. So this was introduced by this paper by Glenn Wild, Pooja Olhaver, and Vitalik Buterin in 2022. And we've thought about how to incorporate these tools as well into Kleros V2, where imagine that you need some kind of specific expertise to be a good juror in some kind of case. Maybe you have some kind of insurance disputes and you need to know insurance to handle those disputes well. Then maybe you might need some kind of SPT saying that you have that expertise. So in Kleros V1, our notion of how to handle expertise is that you should stake into courts where you have the expertise to handle the case as well, because otherwise you'll probably lose money. That's a fairly effective mechanism. It's worked well for all of these years. But here you can still have that. In addition, you can layer on top this additional requirement that up front you need to prove stuff about your expertise in order to be drawn at all. And if you have a model where I need to have one or more SPTs in order to be drawn at all, and then also my drawing chances on any given draw depend on how many tokens I've staked, you wind up with a security model, which is again very similar to the proof of humanity security model, where you are as secure as your weakest SPT, or like the token staking. So you need to break everything to hijack the core, like all of the SPTs and all of the, and the token staking mechanism. We've thought a little bit about ways that like you might handle cases where there are lots of SPTs that are relevant, but none of them are like required. Maybe I have insurance cases around solidity bugs, and maybe I want to know stuff about insurance, but also stuff about solidity. And ideally, you draw like a jury that has expertise on both of those things. Maybe you ask for both SPTs, or maybe you just want to make sure that there's like somebody that has like, with high probability, people have the full set of expertise among the full jury, not necessarily each individual, but like all of the different viewpoints are represented. And like, what's the best way to do that? We've thought a lot about this. These are things that will be developed in future dispute kits. Okay, so now that we like know who our jurors are, the next chapter is sort of like, okay, what do they do? How do they vote for the right answer? How are those votes together? What incentives do they get? And recall again that the like core idea of Kleros is this Schelling point mechanism, where if you imagine that you have some dispute between Alice and Bob, you're going to think about like, you're going to analyze the evidence and think about the case, and you're going to think about how the other people are going to vote. They're going to think, okay, like, I think Alice is right, so I think the other jurors are going to vote for Alice because they think that I'm going to vote for Alice. And you gravitate towards a focal point or a Schelling point, which harkens back to this idea of Thomas Schelling, that when people are trying to coordinate, they want to all sort of like, you want to do what the other people are doing because that's the way the incentives push you to be. You're generally incentivized, at least in Kleros v1, if the other people vote, you vote. So you want to vote the way they vote, but like, you don't necessarily communicate very well. Like even if you're like actively colluding with the other people on Telegram, like there's the possibility of appeal. So you can't, necessarily communicate with the people in the appeal because they haven't even been picked yet. Like, how are you going to come to this, like how do you vote expecting other people to vote in a given way? Absent this kind of communication, you drift towards something that seems special or natural. And the key insight of Kleros is that the honest answer to a dispute will stand out. It will seem natural or special. This runs into problems if you have more than two plausible outcomes. So imagine that you have these four outcomes here. You have a dispute between Alice and Bob. You can give Alice a refund, or you can give Bob like an extension. And maybe you have like really similar extensions that all sort of seem the same. So your vote might be split between your honest participants. Some people will vote for the yellow angel, some people will vote for the pink angel, some people will vote for the green angel, and no one of them will get very many votes. Like there are lots of situations where you might have these sort of discrete multiple options that are relevant to a case. If you're handling content moderation, like maybe you have options around removing content, but also content with a ban on the person who posted it. Like ultimately, people need to be able to make dispute resolution decisions that are more than just a simple yes, no. Again, if your vote is split too much, this can be a problem in a Schelling point system, in that one, the threshold for the attacker to win a vote might be reduced. Like getting back to what I was talking about, 51% attacks before. If the vote is split between the three angels, they have like 20% of the vote. Maybe the attacker can get through with less than 50%. And even worse, in a Schelling point system, people will anticipate that. They'll realize that, oh, this attacker option stands out, that even though I don't believe it's the right option, I expect it to be a focal point that people will gravitate to, not because it's the honest option, but just because it's different than the other ones. So you need to have a voting and incentive system that takes that into account and handles that better. And we've drawn a lot of inspiration from the academic field of social choice theory, which is this branch mostly of economics that looks at how people vote in political elections. How people vote generally, but in particular in sort of political elections. Where vote splitting is also a problem for slightly different reasons, but still it's an issue. Like you might not vote for a candidate for parliament because you don't expect them to win because the vote will be split between similar candidates or something. And a classic thing that people do in those situations is they ask voters for just more information. I don't just vote for one option. vote like some way that gives like deeper information about my preferences, about what I think the outcome should be. And the most famous thing people do is they have ranked ballots where you might rank your candidates like 1 to 4. And here I can express that like the devil option is really bad by ranking it 4th. And I just rank the 3 angel options in any given order. They're like the social choice theorists in the decades of past research, really since like the 1970s, have realized that there's basically no perfect voting system. There are these issues that like come up with like any voting system. There's this famous theorem called Arrow's impossibility theorem that basically says that if you have like a handful of really natural properties of your voting system, then your voting system has to like devolve into some trivial thing where you have like a dictator picking the option that essentially a handful of very simple natural properties you would want to have are incompatible. There's no voting system that has all of them. So what people have done is they've studied trade-offs that they've, in the classical world of like normal voting systems you'd use for elections or whatever, they can say, okay, like this voting system has this property that I want, but not this one. Any system that has this property can't have that one. And you want these like giant tables that say, okay, like I have this, and this, but not that. This one has that, this, and that. And what voting system you want to use depends on your priorities. And we've done very similar research for Kleros. I have a theorem that I published in an article a couple of years ago that's kind of like an Arrow's impossibility theorem for Kleros situation. That like, again, when you have more than 3 options, that there's like a sort of like weird edge cases where the basic notion of being a Schelling point system is kind of self-defeating, and that people will like, the voting system will warp people into having their best payoffs be for things that are not the things they observe. But those are rare edge cases, and you can think about how to minimize them by like picking voting systems that are as most robust as possible, that have the properties you'd want to have in a Kleros-like system. So we have these smaller tables of the kinds of goals we'd want to have that we can continue to develop and research over time, and they have influenced the voting systems that we intend to deploy in Kleros V2. So like the leading candidate at this point that we're going to develop into a dispute kit for Kleros V2 is this would serve voting system here on the 4th line. Because it like has relatively good properties on all these different criteria. And one of the great things about Kleros V2 is that because it's modular and you can deploy different dispute kits later on that will have different voting logic, we can continue to research this. Again, there's the moral of social choice theory is there's no perfect voting system, and as like some better voting system comes along later, we can just develop a new dispute kit and deploy it as necessary. So those are like sort of the big themes, just to like talk about a couple more ideas that come up in voting and incentives. Like the incentive, so like the past few slides, I mostly focused on the voting system, but it's kind of inseparable from the incentive system in a system like Kleros. Like you mentioned that the attacker is trying to hijack an outcome, then like what it matters, like how many votes they need to get to corrupt the outcome, which is a voting system thing, but also like what their budget is and how much it's going to cost them to like, if they like are voted wrong in certain things, like what are the penalties they need, what kind of budget do they have? So the voting and incentives are inexorably linked. One interesting sort of incentive point that is related to another academic field, which is called peer prediction, is how to handle situations where basically the cases are very predictable. So this is something that I've done a lot of research on recently. Imagine that you have categories of cases that like maybe like a business has a case against clients, and you can look at the statistics of past cases and the businesses win 97% of the time or like a large percentage of the time, which isn't necessarily very surprising because, with like the business, in like a situation like Kleros Enterprise, they're only going to bring a case against one of their clients if they think they're right, and they, they're experts in their own terms and conditions. They have like a team of lawyers that write their evidence. So they're like really professional and like, they're right most of the time. So how do you prevent jurors from just always voting for the business, from looking at this and being like, oh, well, the business is right 97% of the time. I'm just maybe not even look at the cases. I'm going to set up a bot that just always votes business. What can you do? And in Kleros V1, our approach has been to tune a couple of parameters, specifically the arbitration fees and the deposits, so that you crank up the deposits the higher the risk there is of a lazy strategy. If you think that a lazy strategy can be right 97% of the time, but it's always waiting for the business, then you make the deposit so like really large, basically, so that the difference between putting a little bit of effort and like looking at the case and that raising your level of precision to 99% of the time because you really looked at the individual case versus the 97% accuracy you could get if you just voted always business is the difference between profitability and non-profitability. That extra like 2% of the time multiplied by your deposit is big enough to make the difference between whether you want to participate in the system or not. And that's good, except for the fact that deposits can be really big, and that can create UX experience problems for our jurors. If you have like my cases where you're paid €5 if you're right, and you lose a €200 deposit if you're wrong, like maybe you're right like almost always, and you're profitable on average, but it's still maybe not the best experience for a lot of users. So we thought about how to adapt ideas from this academic field called peer prediction, which studies the incentivization of crowdsourced mechanisms. It's very relevant to Kleros. And like basically what mechanisms can we adapt from this field and like how can we make them Kleros-y? And I have this specific mechanism with these like scary formulas. I encourage you to, if you're interested in this, to look more at some of the blog articles I've written where I talk about this in greater detail. But the intuition here is, again, that you ask jurors for more information than just like the outcome. In addition to the outcome, you ask them for the percentage of people that they think will vote for each of the different outcomes. And from that, you can kind of glean like whether the case is clear cut or not. If like the jurors mostly think that like it's a slam dunk and everybody's going to vote for the business, then or everybody's going to vote for the client, then if you're wrong, even in a sort of slam dunk case, you lose like a really big deposit. But if people say that the percentages they give indicate that they think the case is really hard, people will sort of vote both ways. It's sort of an edge case. Then if you're wrong, the deposit that you lose is much smaller. And with the idea that if you're a lazy strategy participant, you're frequently going to like get the cut cases wrong and lose the big deposits. But if you're an honest participant, you will mostly be wrong on the fuzzy cases and rarely wrong on the clear cut cases. So you mostly only lose small deposits. So ideally, this would have better UX. Just to wrap up, so here we've talked about like non-binary options that were kind of like discrete. Like I have these 4 options that I can pick as a juror. Like a category of non-binary cases that's like really important to Kleros and dispute resolution in general is anything with numerical outcomes. So this can be really important for partial settlements. Like maybe Bob deserves a 40% payment. Insurance payouts, like how much does my insurance cover me? Again, what should one do in situations like this? What's like the right voting system? And the right incentive system. So a classical thing to do is to ask each person to submit a number and then kind of take the median output of their numbers. This has issues with micro cheating that basically come down to 51% attack resistance again. It turns out that if the attacker has some plurality of the votes, has some larger votes, and they anticipate where the like distribution of people's votes will lie, they can kind of strategically place their votes in such a way that will nudge the outcome, nudge the median, even though they like don't have 50% of the vote. So they can do harm, they can change the outcome even though they have a minority of the vote. And depending on the incentive rule you use, maybe they're not even penalized. So we've thought about other voting systems and systems for that, where instead of just providing a number, again, you ask people for more information, you ask for like an interval of confidence, and this can have somewhat better results with micro cheating. Clement and I wrote an academic article about this several years ago now that these results are based on. And again, this is something that's compatible with the dispute kit can be launched in Class V2. So just to conclude, we have these big chapters. How do you draw jurors? What do they do? And how you draw the jurors is really related to like good blockchain identity tools, which have improved a lot over the past years and have opened up a lot of new mechanisms. And then what do they do once they're drawn? These like really rich academic fields of social choice theory and peer prediction that we have incorporated to like build good mechanisms that will be ready to run with Kleros v2, but then also because Kleros v2 is designed to be modular, as we come up with better new research in this field, we can launch even better stuff later. Okay, do people have questions?
Let me see if we have any comment. Yeah, no comments yet. I don't know, Marcos. I have a question about. I don't know, Marcos, if you can jump in now. But I know that you have been discussing with Marcos how to configure a court for the consumer protection cases in Argentina, right? Can you tell us a bit about the things that you have discussed? And maybe just like an overview, because I think that it will be helpful to see like an example of a real case that is using this research.
Yeah, so there are specific requirements that the jurors have to satisfy in order to conform with the law. Marcos can speak a bit more to those. Like in certain cases, people need to be lawyers or have experience with consumer protection. Like what's interesting, like Marcos can add more precision to this, is that you don't necessarily need to have all of the jurors have exactly the same background. I think you need to have at least one juror who is a lawyer, and then like other jurors like have requirements on their background in consumer protection, but not necessarily are lawyers. So this like lends itself very naturally to the SPT research of like, okay, like what is the dispute kit we want to draw those people? Like they need to at least have like some SPTs that indicate that they meet these requirements. But then because like the requirements aren't uniform, like you want to draw them in ways that are as flexible as possible. They can like bring as many people into your juror pool as possible, like meeting those requirements. So I think our current idea is that the easiest thing to develop for like the immediate future is to just have a dispute kit that requires everything. But then later on, we'll be able to have like a slightly more nuanced dispute kit that like doesn't require you to like, that only like, if you need one lawyer and other people to not be lawyers, you make sure you draw your one lawyer, but then your other jurors have like loose requirements.
Yeah, I think William explained it very well. As you all know, we are working with the Consumer Defense Department in this figure that is called the Consumer Defendant. And one of the characteristics I asked the people from the government are asking is that in every case, there's at least one juror that is a lawyer and has like consumer protection experience, at least of 5 years. The rest of the jurors don't need to be neither a lawyer and don't need to have that experience. So this is more like technique. It's more detail of what is going to happen, but I'm going to mention it very briefly. What we are going to do, we are going to divide it in like two SVTs. The first one is going to be for the lawyers that have 5 years in consumer protection, and the second SVT is going to be for the rest of the applicants. So again, in every case, there's going to be selected at least one juror with the SVT1, and the rest of the jurors are going to be SVT1 or SVT2 in this new court.
That's great. I think it's a good example. It's nice that at this early stage, we'll have an example of the capabilities of DV2 that allow this flexibility, right? Yeah. And in these cases, I think this is a question that some people from the community asked, and it might be a good time to answer. In this case, how the PNK staking interacts with the SBTs.
So, like all of this is stuff that can be modified from one dispute kit to another, but the basic vision we have is that the PNK stake will determine like how likely you are to be drawn in any given case, but the SBTs, supposing you meet the SBT requirements. So in a case where you're required to have like this SBT, then you can only be drawn at all if you have that SBT. In cases where you have, but then your odds of being drawn are like depend on your stake. In cases where there are lots of different SPTs that float around, then maybe you have a filter like that, or maybe you have some like function of your that depends on both your PNK stake and the SPTs you have that determines your odds of being drawn from one draw to another. But basically, like the PNK stake will always have some impact on the chance of being drawn. So if you want to have a higher chance of being drawn, assuming you meet the eligibility requirements at all, then you should stake more PNK.
Okay, that makes sense. And also in these cases, if I'm not mistaken, then there's a possibility that the case is appealed to a higher court, and that court might not have the requirements of the SBTU, right? Maybe in this, I don't know exactly how you were thinking about this specific court, but there's always the general court, right?
Yeah. So,
sorry. Oh, yesterday we were talking with William about this, and of course he has the answer. So I think you can mention what your idea of yesterday maybe.
Sure. So the way I see this is that there should always be the possibility for jurors to appeal to the most robust court, to all the way to the general court if they want. Like ultimately, the sort of 51% attack resistance of the whole community is the mechanism we have the most confidence in. But you know, in the 51% in the general court, not everybody is going to have the requirements to like meet the law in Argentina to be considered jurors in the case. So how we view like the sort of life cycle of the dispute that comes from these sort of ombudsman applications is that maybe there's one or more appeals in the courts that require SPTs, where all the jurors have SPTs. And then the final decision from the point of view of the government, of whatever enterprise is using this ombudsman service, will this be the last one or that like uses the SPTs? And a juror, if they feel like they've been a victim of an attack, may still want to appeal to a higher, more robust court, at least from their perspective. But like the enterprise just ignores that. Like that, that's a thing that's internal to Kleros. And it's it's not something they know about or pay attention to. So in the most of the time, like you wouldn't have these appeals, because if you think about like who appeals in a Kleros v1 case, like usually be the parties. They're the ones that have the most invested interest in any given dispute. The jurors might appeal if they're on the losing side of some round and they think they've been ripped off, and that they'll get the right judgment on appeal. And in this sort of scenario, the only people that would want to appeal are the jurors, because the parties like don't look at the appeals beyond a certain point. So appeals would be pretty rare, but like it is possible for like a juror that wants justice on their ruling and to be appropriately incentivized to appeal to a higher court.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I think for these enterprise cases, one of the priorities is to have like a quick resolution, right? So that's why we are using the first result, the result of the first round, as the final one for the clients. So, but still, there's still the incentive for the jurors not to vote incorrectly, because they can have someone overturning the results, right?
Yeah, and that will influence how they vote in the first round, because they know there's this process, so they're incentivized to be more honest.
So as William just mentioned, jurors have incentive to vote coherently, and the users maybe won't be affected by the appeal system of Kleros, but they can still use the traditional appeal system of Argentina. So they are covered too. So I think everything is working and being still fair for both sides.
Okay, that's great. I think this is a good time to continue with the Kleros Enterprise updates. Marcos.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, William.
Thanks, William.
Cheers.
So besides to what we just mentioned, we are working in this new court for the customer defendant. Well, now what we are having is calls with these jurors that have this experience and are applying to be part of of this new court with the SBT ones, as we just mentioned. Today we have 5 calls. I think this is the 5th call of the day, so a lot of calls. Besides that, from Lemon, there was the last case was resolved last week. I think that was the last case from Enterprise. Then another update is that we are still talking with Pernas because they are opening a new vertical, and well, Kleros is going to be resolving the disputes there. We are working with the dispute policy and the forms that is going to be that are going to be completed by the users. And one last update is that next week there's a new intern that is going to be part of the business development team that's going to be helping us with everything related to Kleros Enterprise, anonymization of evidences, all the manual processes of what is Kleros Enterprise, and well, of course, helping us with the commercial side of the B team. So most probably next week we are going to be doing a presentation of her here.
Nice. Yeah, it's great to have more people helping with with Kleros Enterprise. And one question: the Pernas team now it's being called Cueva, right?
Yes.
So
yes,
just some background for people that are not familiar. Basically, Cueva is the informal name of exchange places in Argentina where you can exchange your dollars for pesos. And this, for some time, was illegal. Now there's like kind of a gray area, and they are basically facilitating that. They're exchanging physical dollars for pesos, and and also crypto started to be used for that purpose as well. So I'm not sure which vertical they are opening. Are you meaning like these pivots that are focusing on this use case? Because before they had like an escrow as well, right, for payment between freelancers and
yes, before they were focusing in like maybe like let's say like just persons, and now in companies. This is the new vertical, and these companies are the ones that might use Kleros with Cueva in the middle.
Okay.
Yes, it's still the escrow. It's still to exchange USD for USDT or USDT for pesos, as you just mentioned, but now including companies.
Okay, that makes sense. I think they received some funding. They're expanding, right? It's nice that we were there before they were their rebrand, before they grew.
Since the beginning. Yeah.
Yes, since the beginning. Great. Let me see if I have any other questions. We had a couple of cases last week, right? Of Junín and Lemon, right?
Yeah, the one of Lemon that I just mentioned, and then we had, I think it was 2 cases from Junín that were resolved too last week. The jury of Junín is still very happy with the answers. Maybe one of the things that they were telling us is that maybe in the future, what we can do is solve the Junín cases with the new court, because they think that lawyers resolving their cases could add some value to the justifications. So that's something that we are still evaluating. But yes, it's a possibility.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, thank you, Marcos. Fortunato, I'll be adding you to the call.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Jean?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's cool. First, great presentation from William. Excited about V2, and also the cases from Enterprise that Marcos is working on are always extremely interesting. It's always cool to see real world cases being solved on court and then having being enforced in real life. This is one of the most common question that we get, like how we structure enforcing Kleros ruling in real world cases. So yeah, extremely interesting. Talking about cases, for the curation update for this week, we passed 600 cases just on curation court, and on this 600, to be precise, 616 and 13 of those cases are currently live. So I suggest you to have a look, and not just to have a look, but also to stake in curation court, because you have high chances to be drawn as a juror, so to get your juror fee, and on top of this you will also get your staking rewards that right now they are about 38% APY. So it is a very good opportunity to participate. Other than this, next week we will update the Scout rewards. As you know, like we incentivize user submitting entities on the Scout registries, and also follow our channel because we are updating our infrastructure, and in the next days we will improve our indexing solution. So follow our channels to be updated when we will do some maintenance. So yeah, these are the main updates from the last week, and if someone has any question, feel free to ask.
I have a question. When will we show the interface that we have been working on for Kleros Scout v2?
Very soon, probably in a week, we will show, let's say, the alpha, so we can start getting the first feedbacks from the community. We have long time submitters who can certainly share valuable feedbacks. And yeah, so as next week you will probably see the alpha and help us in choosing the best path, the best solution for the new interface.
Nice. Yeah, we have already demoed this internally, and it's already functional, right? Everything is already working, but there are lots of things to tweak to make it perfect. So yeah, we have basically the whole team helping with giving feedback. So it's been fun.
Yeah, considering that in the last 3 months, let's say 2 months, we almost had 3 times monthly submissions. So the platform needs to be more functional, whether you are a beginner that you're starting using, Kleros tools, and in this case, Curate, or whether you are veteran and you want a lot of features to make your bulk submissions easier.
Yes, that's nice, and we have people basically getting an additional income, extending their income with the rewards program. So yeah, I'm sure they will have like a very strong feedback about this. And well, another thing that I would like to ask is, last week we had the Serious Oath team talking about Stake Curate. And we already had the Dam Capital team talking about the creation of vaults and strategies. Is there any update we have about that, or there's any, let's say, liquidity projects that we are working on?
We do, this may sound controversial, but we have a lot of liquidity projects that we are working on right now. 2 of them are already popular, which is Open Vino with organic wine, and certifying organic milk, especially in the EU framework. We are currently working on a third different liquid, which is not wine and not milk, but we cannot disclose much as it's at the very beginning stage. Also, you mentioned DAM and serious oath use cases, and I want to remind that these two use cases will use Stay Curate, which is the new version, the new version of Curate, complementary to traditional Curate. And also in this case, I would say within the upcoming 10 days, you will have update about DAM use case, because we are ready. We are just defining the final policy. And for those of you who follow us, know that for Kleros, not just Curate, but also for court, the policy is, I would say, one of the main things to make sure it is done properly to avoid unfair outcomes of cases. So we are taking our time just to define the policy, but everything is ready.
Yeah, I think this is something that we learned along the way, and that some other projects sometimes have some issues with. So yeah, it's definitely worth taking the time and making a good policy. And right now we have like a basically dedicated person to that. I think Facundo is already with us for 2 years or so, 1 year and a half, and he has built some experience reviewing the policy. He's a lawyer and also works a lot with the Kleros enterprise integrations that touch real life law. So yeah, that's really important topic. Great, thanks a lot, Fortunato. I hope we have maybe some updates next week. We will have for sure some updates.
We will,
because we have the new policy for the month, and maybe a new record number of disputes in the creation court. So that's pretty good. So just a reminder, if you have some PNK staked on mainnet or on Gnosis chain, and you're not receiving cases, please consider staking in the creation court, because it's the most active court in the latest. I think probably in the latest months, it's the court with most cases.
Yeah, so exactly. Really... Also including V2. Yeah, it's the court that's getting more cases. Between in the last, since I would say May, June, we over around 30, 50 new cases per month, which is, like it's a good number, because having more disputes is not per se something we should look for, but it shows that the registries are active and bringing more cases. So let's say we with the policy, we aim to have less disputes, so that submission are at the beginning, they are already correct. But when numbers increase, this is something inevitable, that there will be more challenges. If we have 3 times more submission, then it's inevitable that we have more challenges. And since we're already the largest provider of contract metadata, we are working to keep increasing this number. And of course, in parallel, also the disputes will likely grow alongside.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting factors to always have in mind is the challenge rate per submission. That, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 5% or even less. So that's seems to be like a healthy number, but there's always if there's a possibility of improving the policy to avoid like, let's say, frivolous disputes, it's we're always taking a look at them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also the outcome of the disputes is is quite important, because if the disputes are often in favor of the challenger, it also means that the list is not getting attacked, and the community users who flag problems with our list are doing their job. They are finding the wrongdoing, the wrong submissions. So let's say that it's healthy to have majority of outcomes that are in favor of the challenger, but of course we do have also cases where challenger bring not enough evidences. So it looks extremely healthy right now.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Fortunato. Let's go now with Dudu. Dudu has been working on the case of the week. That will present a case that we had recently.
Yeah. I'll be giving a short story with insights into this case of the week. Hello, everyone. Firstly, thanks for having me. Will you? Okay. So yeah, as I said,
1 second before I start to do. There's a bit of background noise. I think. Is it? Just checking. Maybe you have selected the wrong microphone. Just
let me check.
Okay. If not, that there's no problem. We're still able to hear you. Just before you start.
Yeah, excuse myself. Like, entertain the audience like 20 seconds, and I'll get rid of the noise in a second. I know exactly what you mean.
Things that can happen, but I think it's better to have like a recording without a background noise, so we can post later, like make a clip and post later.
Yeah, is it good now?
Yes, it's a lot better. Thanks a lot. No problem.
Okay, and now let's get started. I was talking about I'll be giving a short story with some insights into last week's case of the week, which was an Argentinian case coming from the Spanish Consumer Court on the Kleros Beta that it's still in testing. So yeah, I'll be diving into this beautiful image that you see right now on the screen. So 2 weeks ago, on September 12th, a consumer reported losing about 1.5 million Argentinian pesos, which is roughly about $1,000 right now, in a pitching scam carried over WhatsApp through a fake promotion of the consumer's telecom provider. So this consumer lost the money, and he blamed both his bank and his telecom provider, demanding they refunded the entire amount back to him. The claim raised an important question, which was, when fraud comes from outside actors, can providers still be held responsible for this problem? On the consumer side, the story was very straightforward. You received a WhatsApp link, some message offering supposed benefit for pensioners. So we're talking about someone older. He clicked the link, logged into his banking app like he's very used to, and minutes later, his balance was drained through multiple bank transfers. He submitted a lot of evidence on these official complaint forms to the banks, bank statements of transactions, and a lot more. And he was blaming both the bank and the telecom provider. What was fun to watch, not fun for any of the parties involved, but what was fun to watch was that both providers defended themselves very strongly, because the bank argued that their systems had not been compromised and in any way they were at fault because the consumer himself gave away his codes of access to the bank. So this was a third-party fraud. And the telecom provider argued that they had no involvement at all, because someone was using their image. It was not them doing the promotion, and this was a matter for a higher court to deal with, since it was a fraud, not consumer protection law related. This created some tension between the jurors that were disputing the case, because on one side of the coin you had a consumer with very real losses, which he lost money, and you have the two providers insisting they weren't responsible for the consumer's actions. So he's losing money and they want to get out. This is where I think the Kleros framework comes into play, because right now this was in the Spanish court on V2, and the consumer court has well-defined rules. It's a policy and you need to follow those rules to take a decision. It only handles disputes that arise directly between a consumer and a provider. If the issue stems from an external party, then by definition, it falls outside the scope of the court. Jurors, upon reading this, and this was not related to the policy and not even related to the bank statements, it was related with the evidence and the context that the consumer was giving. So on Monday last week, all the jurors reached the decision to reject the claim, even upon reading the evidence, to not give any refunds back to the consumer. The reasoning was that neither the bank nor the telecom provider had breached any of their obligations. They weren't at fault, because the loss resulted from a pitching scam by outsiders, which the consumer fell victim to. There was nothing the bank or the telecom provider could have done to avoid that person from giving their data. The case was closed on the Kleros court the very next day, and this decision is still being used for consultative purposes by a municipal consumer protection agency in Argentina. So I want people at home to understand this is very important. This goes to show that jurors in Kleros, the decisions that they take are based on rules-driven process. They're applied strictly. Doesn't matter the case. Doesn't matter if someone is losing. I bet it wasn't the consumer's life savings. But even in complex or high-stakes situations, the system is very transparent and is very fast to deliver results, where a traditional court will take weeks on end to solve the dispute and to analyze the evidence and to deliver like a response. So yeah, that's the last case of the week. Yeah, does anyone have questions on this? Because the case was it was like 40 pages of evidence. Of course, I can't present all that here.
Yes, it was a very interesting case indeed, and it's I think one of the most interesting parts is that the jurors here, they don't need to just evaluate what happened, because it's both the parties presented what happened. They also had to evaluate the responsibilities. So there are some, we have like a policy for these cases, and they need to accommodate with that. And for the party in this case that was affected by the situation, still they have the justifications from the jurors. They will be presented from actually in this case the judge of this province that will be using these justifications will present them with what the jurors voted and what were the reasons for that, and this can expedite the process. And
it's a real world case, and it speeds the process. It's not like the Kleros itself is taking the decision, but it's speeding up the process. It's not that endless loop that you see in traditional law.
Yes, and even though the answer here is negative, because the parties were not will not be like the responsible for this, it's still useful for users to see how basically peers of them will vote, because in this case anyone that is capable can participate in the stake-owned V2 can participate on this case. So it's basically general users. They can they review the evidence and voted it this way.
I advise to know Spanish first, because there's a lot of Spanish there.
Yes, actually, yeah, definitely. You need to know
That's
Spanish because
important.
but basically a peer of this user decides that, and for the user it's also good to have this response as early as possible, because in this case he can look for an alternative that will actually be the right one. Imagine, for example,
Yeah, it was
this
3 days
case.
or something. It was very fast resolution.
Yes, imagine if waiting for a long process. Let's say if this case took months instead of a couple of days, it will be even worse for the client, for the affected person here, because they will get to the end and still have a negative answer. So a couple of months will have been lost while he could pursue this on a different court. I think
Yeah.
even the case itself already recommended like creating a criminal case, I think, or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's the telecom provider mentioned in the evidence itself on one of the observations to take this to a higher court, because on consumer law court they wouldn't be able to refund him the money even if they agreed with him and wanted to, because it's not their responsibility to pay him back. It needed to be a higher court to do that, so the bank
Yes.
could reverse transaction. It's a whole mess, but yeah, they talked
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, so even on a negative, there is something interesting that even on a negative result case, like I'd say negative for the consumer, having a quick response with like a clear justifications from the jurors, it's still a positive. It's still positive for them. So and in this case also less generates less cost for the related parties, because it's a faster process. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
a
and
lot,
it's
Dudu.
also, thank you, but I want to add, this is very important for everyone that's listening. Not only is it negative on the reply, so on the verdict, the response came back negative, but this is very positive. It ends up being a win-win for both parties, or the three parties involved, because this way, using Kleros Court, not only are you getting the resolution faster, now the consumer, even though he's lost the case, can move on to a higher court and take the resolution further. And the providers, both the bank and the telecom provider, don't need to spend as much resource as they would need to do before using Kleros, because they're resolving this so much faster. There's not so much manpower going into this, and that helps a lot as well for both parties.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we hope we have looking forward to the case of the next week.
I'll be
I don't know.
publishing tomorrow. Stay tuned, everyone.
Okay.
If you don't follow me on X, go follow, because tomorrow there will be a new case dropping.
Yes, definitely follow Dudu. He has been working on some threads and also some articles. There was a really good article about future key. I recommend
Thank
everyone
you.
to check.
Put my soul into that one.
Yes, great. Well, thank you, Dudu.
Thank you so much for
So
having me.
for I think a couple of updates before we finish, because we already have been live for 1 hour and 50 minutes. There was a code freeze, I think, last week at the end. Yes, the beginning of last week, and so we started the internal reviews on Kleros 2.0, and this has been going on for a couple of days now. And what happens after the internal reviews, it depends on if we find vulnerabilities, then we patch that. Then we can send the contracts for external reviews. So we'll get like an external auditor, and we might have some news about that in the next call. Then after that, then we are ready to deploy the final stable V2, and we are aiming to do that before DevConnect. That will be on the second half of November. So we are super excited to have this ready because it's have been working on this for years now. And as William has said, that there's a lot of research that will finally be able to be implemented and go live. And apart from that, if you have been following Kleros on Twitter, you might have seen that we have an audit competition on HATS protocol. And this is about some Oracle adapters for different chains. So even before the V2, we will be able to solve cases on Kleros coming from different networks. And this is pretty nice because we have some integrations pending that need these Oracle adapters, let's say, to be audited and ready. So one of the integrations will involve future key, and it's a pretty nice one. I cannot say more, but probably in the next call there will be Alex here to talk about this. And well, if you know someone that is an auditor and want to earn some money, there's 80K in prizes for people that find vulnerabilities. It's another great opportunity. And well, next week we'll also have Federico back and talking about the governance conference. I think this is all for this week. I don't know if there's any other comment from the chat. I don't think so. Yes, I think this is it for today. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining the call, and see you on Telegram. Bye.